parents, grandparents, children, stepchildren, but it was also expanded. There was language in there. I mean, it was the normal family, typical family discussions. But as I remember it, the language was extended to include any individuals up to 8 individuals living in the same structure, unrelated, is now considered a family for the purposes of the ordinance. And that's the way I remember it. Was that correct?
I'm just gonna let you know, someone's got their hand up.
Oh, okay.
I think you are
I believe that was the way it was.
remembering that.
Who has their hand up?
Victoria.
If you have your hand up on Zoom, go ahead, please.
Hey, Ivan.
Oh,
I'm
hi,
not sure.
Victoria.
I'm not sure I understand what is meant by a typical family, and maybe I'm nitpicking.
Well, if we go to the ordinance, it actually tells you.
And I'm sorry,
here
I'll
it is.
admit, I don't have
I'm-
that document in front of me.
I'm gonna read it to you right now.
Thank you.
The new language in red is the word family. And the definition is any number of individuals related by blood, marriage, civil union, foster care, or adoption. And I stand corrected that it does not include the 8 unrelated individuals. That must be in a different section. So family, again, is any number of individuals related by blood, marriage, civil union, foster care, or adoption.
Ivan, thank you very much for reading that.
You're welcome. Yeah, we may come across that still. I'm gonna, I'm gonna keep going here.
What was the intention, Ivan, of this?
Of the new definition of family?
Just in the glossary, I think, basically.
We eliminated family. That's a,
We eliminated, the word family was eliminated as an adjective describing a unit. Apparently, family may come into play elsewhere in the document. And maybe that's why in the language where we talk about single family or multifamily, it got changed to unit because there was.
It's number 24. You're coming to it.
Okay, all right, good. We're getting there, but for all intents and purposes, this is the new definition of family. We may not have defined family before because I don't see anything struck. Okay, where are we?
22.
22. Look at us go. A definition of farm stay, and that's in quotations, the words farm stay, the definition of that was provided in keeping with statutory on-farm business standards. So it's coming into compliance with state statute. A definition of farm stay. Item number 23, the definition of farm structure was clarified in keeping with state statute, section 13.7. Again, we can't have something that's conflict with state statute. 23, no, we just did 23. 24, here we go.
Well, this is
The
more,
definition of household is provided to replace the former definition of family. So we have a definition of
Household.
household. Can you find that one, Greg?
stand by.
but we added a new definition of family.
Yeah, but this is a definition of household.
Household.
It used to be household family.
Yeah, okay.
And
Used
now
to be household and they crossed out family, so now it's just household. And here it is. Any number of individuals related by blood, marriage, or adoption, living together as a single housekeeping unit, provided that a group of not more than 8 persons keeping house together, but not necessarily a family, may be considered a household. Let me read that again. Let me take another stab at it. There are words that are crossed out here too, so I'm eliminating those. Definition is household. And the definition is any number of individuals related by blood, marriage, or adoption living together as a single housekeeping unit, provided that a group of not more than 8 persons keeping house together, but not necessarily a family, may be considered a household. And that's where the 8 people came in. They're not a family, they're a household. But you can have up to 8 people living together, unrelated, as a unit in a household. And I'm not sure how that plays into the ordinance.
Well, not unrelated, but related by those.
No,
But it begs the question.
Household and family are
why we're still
different.
Finding family. The new definition.
good question.
One's a household and one's a family.
A family,
Is related.
they're related. But this specifically includes, and it used to be in the ordinance with 5 people, but it got expanded to 8. I want people to understand that 5 was crossed out and 8 was added. And this language, 8 persons keeping house together, but not necessarily related by blood or marriage, was the old language. That got crossed out and replaced by family, which we defined earlier, may be considered a household. Basically what this does is it says if you've got 8 people that want to live together, up to 8 people, they can.
So the only reason for adding the definition of family is to exclude it in this definition?
Apparently. Well, it includes it actually.
Yeah, I'm trying to be more.
I'm confused how you start out with related by those things and then under, and then,
Well, that's all old language.
but it wasn't.
And it used to be what was being defined was household family.
Right, now it's a
The
house.
family's been crossed out, so now we're just describing a household.
Any number of individuals.
In the original existing document, it still says
Not necessarily.
a group of
family.
not more than 5 persons keeping house together, but not necessarily related by blood or marriage.
That was, right, take that.
Not, the related by blood or marriage has been removed, and it says a family, because the definition of family extends
That was,
it may extend a little bit farther to include,
Foster care and adoption.
yeah, exactly. There's been additions in there to make it more clear what's a family. So I think it makes sense.
it wasn't household family. It was just household in the old.
In the old
It
document?
wasn't even household. It was, that's the old definition of
Well,
family.
they added house, they added house.
They added household.
Yeah.
Because that's,
Yeah.
yes, got it. Because that's in red. That's new language.
From,
This is the old definition of family.
why can't we use the new definition of family there?
Well, because this includes something that goes well beyond what we just talked about as a definition of a family. This goes on, and this is the whole purpose of it, to include up to 8 people unrelated. No, that got removed.
We're talking about.
Not necessarily a family that are living together.
I think it's worth talking about. You're doing great. Carry on.
So if
No,
8 people
I
get
it.
together and they want to be roommates,
Yeah.
they can't afford a place to live, they want up to 8 people. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be up to 8. And they can't afford to find a place to live, and they say, hey, if we all get together, we can rent, this place is big, let's go ahead and rent this place. This allows that to happen.
Right.
That's basically what we're talking about.
That's her.
Yeah, that's the purpose. And the whole reason for it is, this replaces the old definition of family. And what they took out of the old definition of family was the non-related or people, or the ones that are not related through law or adoption, so forth. That got moved into family definition.
This is.
And household, which is the new one, talks about a family under the new definition, but it also talks about up to 8 people that are unrelated. I think I've explained it well enough.
But not necessarily, I mean, that's excess.
Yes. I mean, that makes it clear that these are 8 unrelated people that are pooling their resources and living together.
Well, any number of individuals related by blood marriage.
I think I'm clear with it in my mind.
get it.
I think you're clear with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Glad you did.
Any other questions on that one? We'll move on, if I can figure out where we are.
25.
Okay, 25. A definition of qualifying product was added in keeping with statutory on-farm business standards. Again, being consistent with state statute. Number 26, a definition of required agricultural practice product was added in keeping with state statute. 27, also in section 13.19, which is the section I was just talking about, a cross-reference to camping unit was provided with the definition of recreational vehicle, RV. Let me think about this one for a minute. Cross-reference to camping unit was provided with the definition of recreational vehicle. I think I understand that.
Mhm.
Any questions on that one?
I.
Okay, go ahead, speak to the podium.
You probably can't answer the question, but I know the planning commission is working on an RV proposal of parking in, at a residential home. Is that going to relate in any way to this?
I don't know, Steve.
If it is either way, we need to make sure that they're both coinciding with each other.
And I think the planning commission will do that. I mean,
It was just,
Okay.
that was what was added.
this is what, it's under the definition of recreational vehicle. And this is it was an existing definition. After the word recreational vehicle, they added in parentheses RV. So an RV is a recreational vehicle. And then the definition, and this is old language. A vehicle which is built on a single chassis, 400 square feet or less, when measured at the largest horizontal projection, designed to be self-propelled or permanently towable by a light-duty truck, and designed primarily not for use as a permanent dwelling, but as a temporary living quarters for recreational camping, travel, or seasonal use. And then what's added, that's all existing. What was added was see also camping unit, which is looking for that definition. And we talked about camping unit before. Okay, we didn't.
No, I don't think we tried that.
Well, we can go up.
I wonder where camping unit is.
It's under C.
Let me go to camping unit.
There's 3 references or 10 references. Basically under 6.4, which is camping and camping units. Basically giving the allowable permits of up to 3 camping units. So it's saying that an RV is a camping unit.
That's what it's saying. Okay.
And there's camping unit.
Yeah, camping unit. The camping unit definition is a brand new addition. I thought we did discuss it somewhere. And it's the camping unit definition is a portable structure, including but not limited to campers, travel trailers, RVs, motorhomes, lean-tos, tarps, tents, or yurts erected, located, or installed to provide temporary shelter or accommodations primarily for recreational purposes. And they're just tying the definition that we were just talking about. The RV definition, they're tying it back to this camping unit definition.
Where does it come into?
Where do they come into the ordinance? That's
not in this. whole
it's not in the proposal, so it's got to be existing language.
We weren't changing that in this.
We got that right there.
That's what we took out. We took one of those things out.
No, we added, camping unit was added.
Yeah, but one of the 5 things that we took out,
Oh, was the
was this.
discussion of.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
so because
exactly.
we weren't ready to
Exactly.
deal with it. So that's why we-
Exactly. So the definitions stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's harmless at this point.
Harmless at this point.
But I think what you're talking about is what they're dealing with now.
Correct.
Yes.
5 ones that we kicked back, were
Yeah,
things that we
yeah,
felt.
they're still working on tweaking those to,
Because at the last meeting, that.
Yeah.
I think
So-
I'd use the word
so
consequential.
Eventually, these definitions will become useful potentially.
I doubt it.
But anyways, we're down to the last one here, 28. The use table was changed for a dormitory to be permitted in all districts where dormitories are currently allowed. So what that tells me is that probably in some of those districts, they were conditional uses and now it's permitted use. And that's a fairly significant. Once again, the use table was changed for a dormitory to be permitted in all districts where dormitories are currently allowed. It'll be a permitted use in whatever districts they used to be potentially a conditional use.
The section that they,
The disclaimer.
yes.
The submission from the planning commission, the recommendation that we got ends with this language. The planning commission finds the proposed revisions to the ordinance are in keeping with the goals and policies of the town plan. Several of the changes remove barriers to housing development and are in keeping with the town plan housing policies. Other proposed changes offer clarifications to confusing or unclear provisions or relax overly restrictive positions. The planning commission concludes that the revisions reinforce town plan goals of encouraging a concentrated mix of commercial and residential uses in the core, surrounded by rural, residential, and resource-based uses in the outlying areas. And that was a blanket statement from the planning commission. Okay, we had,
Two. So I guess we have to discuss or come to a consensus is if that redlined article was inadvertent. I think we feel like it was inadvertent.
I feel like it was crossed out
Number
when
five.
it wasn't meant to be crossed out.
So I want that included.
Otherwise,
As
yeah.
is. Otherwise, we have to kick this whole thing back.
Right.
So just to clarify this process once again, Ivan, and I know you mentioned some at the beginning. So if there's a change tonight, the select board can make that change and hold one more public hearing. Doesn't have to go back to the planning commission. Planning commission does have to write a report like this based on the change and give that back by the time that meeting's held.
Are people, and this has absolutely no bearing on our decision, but it helps me wrap my mind around it. When you see something that is clearly new language added to the ordinance, and it's in red, and then it's crossed out, does that create confusion in your minds? It does mine. Yeah. So I think we need to address that. Because I think Mike is right. I mean, if there are 4,000 or 400 or 4 or 1 who didn't come because they thought that was struck, but they have a concern with it, and this is a public hearing, we have eliminated their ability to have input into that particular item. So the other one was relative to the magnitude of the changes on the,
What does modest mean? And
what
number
did
13.
modest mean? And we had that explanation before. And unfortunately, we don't have it here this evening.
But it was cut off on Greg's.
Yeah, we couldn't see it on the,
I mean, I have the original, but I don't know what obviously the changes went to.
There's no red marking.
there was nothing in red that I could see there.
So that the definition of what modest is, or a table that shows what modest should be.
Now, that would fall under, if we,
Isn't.
if we didn't have the other issue with the item that was crossed out and creates confusion, that would fall under,
Trust the planning commission's work. That's what it was.
well, we could ask for clarification on that. And if it's in the document,
If it's in the document,
then we're fine.
the report doesn't have to recite the
Right.
changes verbatim.
But since we can't seem to locate it in the document, we wouldn't have to, we could recess the hearing and come back in the context of the same hearing with that new information and resolve it without having to rewarn and go to another hearing. But I think the other one causes us to have to rewarn and have a second hearing at this level.
you can't recess and get a clarification on that possible clerical error and,
Well, maybe you could.
I mean,
Yeah, but the
what's,
point is that it wasn't warned properly,
Yes,
so that. you
that's the
can't-
point, because in the warning,
it includes.
it included
Right.
that document that Mike has, and so that becomes part of the warning.
And it's not just for your meeting, it's for the planning commission.
Yeah.
Right.
Public hearing as well.
Yeah, so, so
Non-starter.
we do need to, first of all, get clarification on what exactly is happening there, and then make sure that it's presented clearly. We could, if we have to rewarn, we could, address the other issue at the same time.
Let's just do those two though, because
Yeah.
we already did all these.
Yeah, I think those are the only
Yeah, those are the
outstanding
only
ones.
ones.
All you have to do is get-
5 and 13.
5 and 13. Okay.
Mike, your point was?
all you have to do is get the report rewritten.
No, I disagree.
On the second.
On the second one, yes, yes.
Yeah.
But on the first one, I think we need to rewarn.
Or go without it. And throw it into the next tranche that's coming through.
The trouble is, the last time we did that, the last time we pulled 1 or 5 out, it required starting the process over again because it was a substantial change to what had been presented.
I think Scott clarified tonight that even if you make a substantial change, the only thing the planning commission has to do is rewrite the.
That's correct, but they still have to hold another public hearing.
Right.
Okay,
But,
When you say they, you mean us.
yes,
yeah.
all you people.
Okay. So I think we can,
We have to.
we're gonna have to have another hearing because we have, so we just don't, we feel like we have not warned a understandable document.
Thanks for finding that, Mike.
We will address these two. So
That's why I was.
I have a procedural question. We can't take any action in the context of a public hearing except to close or extend the hearing. Are we at a point where we would close this hearing so that we can get the wheels moving on this next step? That's right. Okay, so I'm preparing to close this hearing. As I understand it, everything that we're discussing here this evening is still going to be involved in the next hearing.
That's right. With-
So,
Along with those two changes.
along with those two changes, one change and one clarification.
Well,
Mike,
yeah. The point on number 5 is it was not warned here. It was also not warned at the planning commission.
Yeah.
So if you drop 5 now, ask them to include it in the next bunch that comes through,
I understand what you're saying.
you can then just go ahead with 13, rewarning it properly. And, or it may be that, in fact, it's on the red line copy. It's not on my red line copy, but mine is cut off.
Yeah, I did the other one.
Yeah. In which case you could then just go ahead and adopt them at the next meeting.
Right.
Except 5.
Get what you're saying. We have to be, no one understands probably better than you do, Mike, how procedurally accurate we need to be with this stuff. Because you've helped us through situations where that was called into question and in a professional capacity. So what Mike is saying is
We're pulling.
if we pulled out number 5,
Ask the planning commission to rewrite the report without 5
And
and
include the table for 13.
maybe find out that you don't have to change it because it is on the red line copy.
yeah,
Far lines go up. Either way.
I think with all the confusion, I would recommend just doing it straight up,
Yeah,
just to be clear.
I think so too.
It's clearer for everybody in the public.
So,
So here's another suggestion, and I will find the answer out before our meeting in 2 weeks. I've been through a couple of these, as you have, Ivan, many of them. And at some of these, when it's come back to the select board again, and you've already gone through 20 of these possible changes, the select board can, I think, close that meeting and then adopt it later at that meeting, even though it says adopted at the next meeting. So I will clarify that. I've seen it done.
we used to do that. And it may have changed at some point, but I can remember countless hearings, zoning hearings that we held where we had a hearing like this, we closed it and we adopted it in the same meeting.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
But are you telling me that that's not what statute?
I want to clarify that
Okay,
because she uses the term, this is the league's, VLCT's attorney says, uses the term to, shall be adopted by a majority of the legislative body at a meeting that is held after the final public hearing.
As long as you warn that meeting.
Right. So we can move.
so what we should do if we're holding a public hearing and when we close the public hearing, then we open our regular meeting. If it's on as an agenda item, on that agenda, we could approve it technically in the same evening. Yeah, so,
That's the only, I'll clarify that before we meet.
yeah, okay.
I think we can do that.
When we warn a new hearing,
For the 21st.
remember in the agenda to have it included as an agenda item for possible approval.
That's the approval.
Right. I'm thinking about something else right now. I'm thinking about the 15-day thing.
Yeah, I know.
Because we meet in 14 days.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. Well, the 15 days is after receipt of the report
Amended,
from the planning commission.
yeah. We have to put them on.
So unless we got a yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. So it's gonna have to be in a month.
Okay. It'll be the first meeting in
When's the
June,
planning commission meet again?
Next Monday.
Monday.
Okay, so they can get this. I don't think these are significant items for them to deal with. We just need to get the report from them.
I just think the stage needs to be set more appropriately for stuff moving forward because this has been. You guys were talking about this, what, in November?
Way
Right?
before that.
Before that, I mean, it's been 2 years and we're here ready to be on the last step. I know things can come up, but this seems like a very simple
I'm gonna-
procedural thing that
I'm,
it's just clear.
there are many times when the speed at which government moves is gonna be frustrating.
I don't disagree, but I think that this seems to be, we're talking about, Mike's got a copy of a document that we don't, Greg's has the only person who has a copy of it.
Well, we all had it and except you.
Yeah.
Because you weren't here yet. And I could go in back through my old emails and find it, but Greg found it.
Sure.
Yes. But as I said earlier, we can't shortcut or take steps in the approval of any kind of regulatory document because somebody's going to litigate it.
I'm not asking for shortcuts. I'm asking that just when something like this comes to us, that all of us are fully prepared with the documentations because I wasn't. Now, I should have asked for it.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest. But it's disappointing that, Mike's got a copy that's cut off.
It's remarkable. It's remarkable to me that this has been through 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe the 5th hearing on it. And that crossed out new language existed through all those and none of us picked it up and we've been through it. So,
Maybe, we don't know that it existed the whole time. It could have been just in the last revision.
I went to the planning commission.
you did bring it up at the
Yeah.
planning commission hearing. Okay. You said that before. Okay, well, you're right. I agree with you. It's a little bit, not a little bit, it's embarrassing that we get to this point.
It is.
You
Didn't,
shouldn't be embarrassed. These are important things. And,
Mike, I'm not embarrassed by the notion that we have to make sure that we follow the letter of law. What I'm embarrassed by is that we've been through so many bites of this apple and the apple is still completely intact as it was before we started.
you could just.
And I'm not gonna, I mean, I don't want to have an ongoing conversation on this. We're going to
Public comment.
Close the hearing.
close the hearing. Is everybody on board with that? And nobody has anything else to say? That is an action that the board takes, as I understand it. It's the only action that we can take in the, so a motion to close the hearing would
Make a
be,
motion, to close the hearing.
Second.
and seconded by
I think,
any number of members. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the hearing is closed. If you have anything that you want to discuss with us about it, we're done. We're not allowed to take further testimony after the hearing is closed. And, but you'll have a chance to do that when we set a new hearing, apparently sometime about a month in the future.
It's the first Tuesday in June.
First Tuesday in June, it should not be a long hearing.
No, you can just talk about those two unless someone from the public brings up one of these you just talked
I
about.
mean, this,
Okay.
we can run through it pretty quickly. Okay, good. We can't warn that meeting now because we have not received a report from the planning commission. So let's just hope it all comes together to do this again in a month and we'll have this fun all over again. All right, I'm going to reopen our regular select board meeting for this evening and we'll start as we usually do with public comments. These are anything that anybody wants to speak to that's not on the agenda. Now would be the time to do so. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about? It's not on the agenda. I think you all have the agenda before you.
Just one. Can you clarify for me something that there's questions out there about if somebody wanted to buy a piece of property, okay, do they have to buy 10 acres to build a home?
There are sections in town where they would have to buy 10 acres. Yes.
Can that be changed and how can that happen?
That was part of a change that became law or became an ordinance probably 3 or 4 years ago. When was it? Okay, 3 years ago. Anything can be changed.
And do you know why that was changed?
It was part of an overall, the whole bylaw was reconstructed. It was a totally new document with changes to almost every zone. And when it came to residential use, there was way more concentration in the middle of town where water and sewer and other amenities are offered. And there are now the maximum, or I'll say the largest building lot back then was 2 acres in all the zones.
Right.
But now there's zones in the outlying areas where it's 5 acres and there's zones where it's 10 acres. And that was an effort to preserve open land and that sort of thing. And I'm just giving
Right.
the background, not defense.
It surely at this point in time doesn't encourage people to buy 2 acres to build affordable housing. It surely doesn't encourage that. And I think it needs to be looked at again because of the fact that, also inherited property.
Yeah.
If I own 50 acres and I want to will my 4 or 5 kids 2 acres, they can't build on it. So I think that needs to be addressed.
That would have to, that discussion would begin at the planning commission. The chair is well aware of that change that took place prior to his being on the board. Also, I understand there's been some discussion with the Development Review Chair. So that may be happening at this point.
Do you agree with me?
I am in a particularly difficult position on this because my property happens to fall into that 10-acre zone, and I probably would have to recuse myself because it would certainly have financial impacts on me personally.
We have a hand raised.
There's a
30,
lot of moving
70,
pieces to
30,
it, but what that, in order to accommodate that, the whole parcel would have to be
Right,
developed,
right.
just not just
Yeah.
10 acres, so.
Right.
I probably should not discuss it.
We
any
shouldn't go
further.
that, well, you'll get.
There's a
into
hand
that
up,
rabbit
Ivan.
hole. We
Yeah.
got top of that.
On the screen.
Any other public comments?
We do have one on the screen.
Okay. On
Hi,
Zoom, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm gonna let my dog out at the same time as talking. Ivan, I'm wondering where any follow-up is either within town staff or with the select board on looking at the intersection of
Can I speak?
Barnumville and Beach and the railroad tracks. And
Scott.
how people, not everyone, but a large majority of people driving through that intersection coming from all directions fail for whatever reason to stop and proceed without stopping, even though there are cars at the intersection before them.
Victoria, it's Greg, and I went down after the last meeting for a little personal site visit and talked with Scott, and they've added, I don't know if you've noticed, signs coming from all directions that are, I think they're yellow triangles with a smaller stop sign inside indicating stop ahead. And I think, Scott, we're also planning to repaint the stop blocks. What are they called?
Stop bars.
Stop bars. And so that went back and did another visit after that was done, and it's pretty clear and evident that there's a stop ahead. They do make stop signs with flashing lights around them. I don't know if that would affect the horses.
Yeah, we talked about actually installing cameras. So I don't know when those signs were all posted or the lines were painted. I've been out of town for a couple of days, but I can tell you that within the last week, I've had numerous observations of people not paying attention to the three-way stop. So it's continuing, and that's why I'm bringing it up at this meeting.
We appreciate your continued input on this and
Persistence,
I think there's certainly a commitment to try to get every intersection in town and every road in town into a situation where people are complying with speed limits and stop signs and other traffic measures. And we can't put a camera at every one of those. I mean, it's just.
no, but I did volunteer to help fund in some way a camera at that intersection.
We appreciate that. We'll continue the dialogue. The lines have not been painted yet, but they will be soon. The stop bars and I'm well aware of the intersection.
Yeah,
My property surrounds it.
signs are in.
Any other public comments? Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's so the people on Zoom can hear you.
Okay, first of all, I live near that intersection, and I do think part of it is it's just strange when you pull up. It's like it wants to carry you, in a certain direction. So I think an additional sign or something like an extra sign, there's a stop, sometimes it's just like where the sign is placed. If it's placed too late, you don't see it peripherally. Anyway, I have just two quick questions, really. One is it's the Walgreens parking lot. My daughter goes to MEMS and I park in that new lot that they put. And when you're driving in Maine, it says enter from Main Street. And then when you're leaving, and there's a little arrow on the right side that points in towards Walgreens. When we are leaving with our kids, apparently we're supposed to go through the Walgreens parking lot. It's not clear, and I don't actually know who or how that works. I have been yelled at so rudely with my daughter in the car because I wasn't clear at first at the beginning of this year, and I exited and people just hurled really horrible things at me. And I still, now that I know the rules, because there's not like a clear arrow that says, go this way.
Yeah.
People do it all the time. It's a mess.
Let me tell you, I remember the original zoning permit for that parking lot, the Walgreens parking lot,
Yeah.
not the one behind the town ones, but the ones that you're talking about. And there were two access points to that. And the point that's closest to what was formerly called Malfunction Junction, where the roundabout is now,
Yeah.
that was for exit only. And the reason for that was you didn't want people making turns off the street that close to the intersection where there was all the congestion. The other point, and you were well within your rights, was supposed to be an entrance and an exit, both.
Okay.
I don't think the signage.
No, and people
says that.
yelled at me.
And I don't remember that ever being changed. So I think that's still the way the original
Okay.
permit.
How would we make that clear? Because every parent I know, I don't know what it is, but I've been yelled at twice in that intersection for going and waiting to turn.
Yeah.
And they just stop and it's like brings out such road rage. And I don't know if I'm wrong or not. So I don't know.
I don't have the answer to that, but I certainly understand the confusion. And I guess it would require a little bit of research, but there are people that would know as to whether that ever changed. So
Even if it's just,
that's an entrance only, but I don't believe that's just an entrance.
okay.
That's,
'Cause I think even just one arrow that either points people towards the exit of Walgreens or says you can exit here, that's all we need is like one painted arrow and it would solve a lot of anxiety on my part.
It should be filed.
It's in the permit.
It's in the-
And we'll
so
just
it should
pull
be
the
in the
permit.
permit, you may be able to go to zoning,
And look it up.
and they may help you find it.
And if we found out the answer, what
DRB with
would we do?
the hearing, but
Who would,
well, they're not out of compliance. I mean,
well, if they're not a
I,
signage.
the permit may have said that they needed to clearly mark that.
yeah.
I don't know. And it's not clearly marked. So,
And if it doesn't say that, how do we ask them
well,
to say
it
that?
doesn't say that, and there are no changes involved. It really becomes they could do it if they wanted to, but they don't really have
Is
to.
that Walgreens that owns it or,
Well, Walgreens doesn't own anything. They're just a tenant, but
okay,
the owner of the property, who was a pretty reasonable guy,
okay.
say, okay, I can.
But from the outside looking in, it says exit entry.
Well, from the
Does
outside,
it still say that?
it says,
I thought so.
but there's a teeny sign, it says entrance. And when you go to park at school, sometimes people go on Memorial Ave
Yep.
and they exit out that way. So if you,
Now that big arrow that.
well, but it's on the right side. So it looks,
I understand what you're saying.
so I'm just saying, I'm not the only person.
Okay, you know what?
So.
We'll take a look at it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The other thing is, I was just wondering, because I have a child and I would like to attend more meetings, how is the time here determined? Is it ever possible to like move it earlier? And is there ever an option of childcare on site? Because I know more people that would come if we had childcare. Has that ever been discussed?
I'm maybe one of the drivers of when the meeting is, and if it was moved earlier, I would not attend. I would resign.
Okay,
And
okay.
that's just because of my,
And at this time, has there ever been discussion of childcare, like, just so people can come and be,
there has never been in my memory, and I've been here since the beginning of time.
how would we start that conversation?
Uh,
Would we have to bring it to,
Can you attend via Zoom?
I can, but I don't feel like it's the same. I mean, and I would like to see more people here. I think it helps everyone feel like we're all a part of this community, and it's great to see people's faces and to know our neighbors, and I feel like it would be, I, I feel like it would be great for our kids
You would
to see us coming and
absolutely love
participating.
to have more attendance at our meetings.
Yeah, I know.
Or remotely, and we do have more attendance, and they are televised. You can't participate when you watch it on GNAT, but you can, at least you can see what's happening. But I agree. I think when you're in the room, it's got a whole different feel to it.
Yeah. So do you hold them at the library sometimes?
Very rarely. We've had a couple of big rooms there, but that's it.
Okay. Is there a possibility of on-site childcare, or do we get into weird legal things that I don't?
I don't think there's any legal problems, but there's certainly nothing in the budget to accommodate that.
No, Bennington does it.
Bennington does it.
Lots of kids in community centers.
We could look at what other communities do, and
I'm just thinking of ways, I think it's good for kids to see the parents participate in the community as well. Like, we want to instill something. Or,
Hell, I've got 4.
I know, well, I will fire another. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other public comments. We'll get into the actual agenda. We need to approve 2 sets of minutes, April 16th, April 30th. Were we all here for those 2 meetings?
I wasn't here for the.
Okay, so
16th.
let's approve them separately.
Yeah.
Let's do the 16th first. I need a motion.
Move to approve the minutes for April 16th.
Second.
Seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
They're approved with 1 abstention, and then the minutes of 4:30. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of April 30th.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that was 5-0. Okay. The item number 6 is the select board to review and possibly approve amendments to the new personnel policy.
Yeah, we did. We recently approved it. What happened was we got immediate feedback from a couple different departments because we left out some things that you're going to consider tonight adding back in. So 2 main pieces, page 18. We were under the impression, and this was from a couple different sources, legal sources, that we couldn't include holidays and vacation towards calculating overtime. That's not correct. We found that you can include it, and we had been doing it for years. Somewhere between 2011, I think I sent you a copy of John O'Keefe's email or memo to the staff at that time when they said they weren't going to include it. Sometime between that memo and recently, it changed. But according to some staff, it's always been that way anyways. So we found that you can include it. It's a generous offer, but we've always had it. And it's been one of those things, if we take it away, they certainly felt slighted. So when we passed it a couple weeks ago, they immediately brought it to our attention. So I would encourage us adding that back in tonight. And the other thing is on page, the last page, which is page 31. We had dropped that whole section out, the retirement healthcare insurance. And we would like to add that back in also. It just is a sort of a reward to people that stay for a long period of time and provide good service to us over the course of those years. And we had left that out in the new policy, and we'd like to add that back in.
Okay, so the two changes to the personnel policy been well explained. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, so on that, I got some feedback, and it used to be that 90 or more full years was 65% of the premium, and it's at 60. Is that a huge consequential number? And is there a reason that we went from 65 to 60%?
There's 60 in the old one, Greg, so I don't know where the 65 came from.
Okay. Well, that was that person's mistake, I imagine.
Oh, okay, hold on a second. So there was a following section after that 60% that said that any employee, any of these long-term employees that retire with at least 35 accumulated and unused sick days, and did not take more than 3 sick days in the last year, they would get an extra 5%.
That's
5%.
still in there,
That's not in there right now.
not taken, it's removed.
Yeah, I mean, it affected so few people that we didn't include it in this rewrite. We can include it if that's what you want to add in. It's up to you.
It was just in keeping with the taking away versus not, and I thought, my first impression of it was how consequential is
It's very much,
savings wise.
in fact,
I think,
it won't cost us
I
much
think we should,
because as soon as, it only affects people between 55 and 65.
Right.
When they hit 65, it goes away because they hit Medicare.
right. It could be just the,
Take care.
I think we should keep it. Or add it back in.
Correct.
Okay,
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
so that would be three changes that we're discussing.
Including, right.
Anything else?
I have
Steve?
a question. Is,
Can you go to the podium, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Question on background checks when a staff is interviewed. Is that to be part of this personnel policy?
It's in the policy that was approved a few weeks ago.
It is in there?
It is.
So there are background checks on all of our employees in the town. Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Nice.
Any other discussion of the personnel policy, which we did approve, but these are changes to the final document that are being proposed. And they're all going back to something that we've done in the past. I'd entertain a motion.
Right, motion to accept the additions or the revisions to the employee handbook.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And Scott, you know what those revisions are?
We'll add that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Sounded like 5-0. It is 5-0, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. The select board to approve the town's local emergency management plan.
This is something we do annually. It's unrelated to the next item on the agenda. This is we update all the contact information, and when there's a change, we insert that.
Yes.
Oftentimes, someone will leave and we have a new person come in over the course of the year. And this last year, for example, the rescue squad had Katie come on board. So her name is now in there, her contact information. So we provide this to the planning commission, not the planning commission, I'm sorry, regional planning commission, and they collate it for the state.
Miss 7?
Yeah, are we on 7 or 8?
I think we.
Oh, we
I
did,
think
didn't we?
missed 7.
It's okay, we can finish this and go back.
We'll finish.
We'll
Yeah.
finish it and go back.
Yeah.
And I'm
Sorry.
looking at that document. I can see all those names, numbers.
Yeah, okay, well, that seems pretty simple. Is there a motion on agenda item number 8?
I will make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the local emergency management plan as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Jonathan. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That's 5-0. Now we'll go back to 7. That was my mistake. Possibly approve the contract with BCRC for the rewrite of the town's hazard mitigation plan. The town issued an RFP for proposals to assist the town with the required rewrite and received 2 bids.
BCRC was one of the bidders. The other was Tidal Basin from the Washington DC area. They tend to do a lot of these, but they're at a competitive disadvantage in dealing with BCRC because we do fund them and they provide services for us anyway. So their bid was $9,949. Tidal Basin was $23,894. What a difference.
Seems simple. Which means, is there a motion?
Do we apply the 7,000 to that number and then, or in addition to? We don't know the answer to that probably.
I'm sorry,
Saying that 7,000 for the town plan or the?
It's 7,000 a year we pay them.
oh, that's just part of the service they provide for a certain, they'll provide a certain amount, a certain level of service, and then usually there's a contract for the difference.
Okay.
And this is the
And
contract
Is
that
the
differs.
contract for the difference?
Correct.
Move to approve the contract with BCRC for the rewrite of the town hazard mitigation plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 5-0. 7, 8, 9. Possibly approve Hound Dog's request to leave the vendor equipment overnight. Neil, you want to
Poor Neil.
chime in on this?
Hour and a half in.
Mhm. Good job.
And I expected this visit.
Thank Brownie, I guess.
They do have a copy of your email request.
Yeah.
I do.
Is there anything you want to add? Just,
No, just looking for, to keep the trailer there overnight, the same as you guys extended to Brownie. Just looking for the same thing, that's all.
and, I mean, this is in our ordinance is, our discretion on these things for class 2, you're class 2, right? Vendor, whatever,
Looking at.
whatever level this is.
So we passed, you passed the ordinance on the 19th of March. Takes 60 days to go into effect. So on May 19th, that change will go into effect. He's a little ahead of the game, but there's no reason why you can't approve that tonight.
Exactly. My recollection was with the other vendor that, we kind of extended that since it was going to be allowed in the ordinance and we had every intention of allowing that to happen. There probably wouldn't be an enforcement issue if it was going on in during the 60-day period before the ordinance could become effective. So if that's what we did for one, if you think it's the right decision for Hound Dog.
The ordinance, the ordinance said on a case-by-case basis.
Right. And that's why I say if we decide that
Yeah.
works for Hound Dog also. Is there, I mean, this location is off the street, the same as Brownie. There's,
Kept.
I'm wondering if there's any anomaly here why it wouldn't be extended, given the precedent of extending it to another.
I haven't had a single complaint about his operation.
Not lately. When Neil first came, there were a lot of complaints from most,
Used to.
from a restaurant owner who's no longer with us, but I stopped in and I got a hot dog. I think maybe the only time I ever did. And I said, I'll just see what, and there were photographs of me taken from behind a bush on a neighboring property, going to your establishment as if that was some kind of big deal. But these are kinder, gentler times now.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I fully intend to pay. I did that time. If we don't think there's a reason not to extend this same,
And I think these were the two.
I was anticipating you to
Right.
come in. I mean, that's what I would do if I.
I was on the agenda.
Well, no, even before you were on the agenda. When we discussed the ordinance change, I said, well, and I think I said it right out loud in the meeting, well, I expect Neil to be here the next day. I mean, it's,
Yeah, pretty close.
yeah. So,
You did.
I should have said in 60 days, but, if the intent is, and we can't approve this until the ordinance becomes reality, is that true?
You can approve this happening.
Subsequent-
When the ordinance
Subsequent to the,
becomes effective.
yes, subsequent to the ordinance becoming effective. So that was,
Just like we extended the same thing to.
yeah, so that would be the motion to allow the trailer to stay on site. Subject to the ordinance becoming effective on May 19th.
Subject and following. So that's not an end date. That's you're going through that.
Okay, yes, okay, yeah. So is that, are you making a motion?
Just the way you said it.
And so can he tweak that there?
Well, we're gonna get to that. Let's see where we land on the, you just made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jan. Any discussion of the motion to approve this subject to and beyond,
And right.
the ordinance becoming effective?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, the precedent we set was with the prior applicant, because we fully intend to allow you to do this, you shouldn't expect any kind of enforcement issues if you choose to do it before it becoming effective. And I'm not saying that, I'm not telling you that, I'm reminding the board what we said to the other applicant. So would it be consistent for us to say the same thing this time? I see a lot of nodding heads. We can't take an action on that, but
Okay.
we can talk to town staff and say, look, in, what's today? The 7th, in 12 days, this is going to be permitted, so let's not do any enforcement on it. So,
Right.
All right.
congratulations, Neil, and thank you. Your long service to the town.
Thanks, Neil. I'm confused. Where are we?
Well, we
10.
just did 9, so probably 10. 10 is an interesting one. It's discuss the possibility of forming a housing-focused committee or recreate the housing task force in a new format. What's the lead in on this?
One of the select board members asked that we include this as part of proposed
Yep.
change, and then
Do you want to lead us in
Remember-
the discussion?
the housing task force, you asked to go away, I guess. And so you could reshape it. And so that was where we left that part of it off. And then
Yeah.
it's gonna.
Yeah, and that, go ahead, John.
So I mean, in that vein, after the housing task force officially disbanded in the last meeting, I wanted to make sure that there was no time lost between that entity no longer continuing to operate and us having a clear and definitive plan moving forward. Like, here are the things that we believe that this housing group should be focusing on, what their priorities are, what the hierarchy is, meaning who are they going to be speaking, who are their, obviously the reason why there was questions about the previous housing task force was, were they a part underneath the select board, or were they underneath the planning commission? So I've just tried to pull together some initial or preliminary items to try to put some of these things on paper to give a direction for us to start moving in a direction on housing, creating this next phase of the housing task force, or whatever it is that we decide to call it. I took the liberty in this proposal, which, gives an objective, which outlines things such as, what their overall purpose is, giving them ideas that here's what we're looking for: shovel-ready projects, places that we can do certain things that are going to potentially benefit the community. Now, I know that the select board has made it very clear that we're not going to be going around building houses, right? That's not the objective. The objective here is to put together a group of folks out of discussing, my original first thing in the very first meeting was that I wanted to make sure that the select board, the planning commission, and other committees and boards within town government have the ability to work cohesively together on such a large issue as housing. And I think you heard that, and you also saw the opportunity to say, okay, I think it would be potentially a benefit for us to take members of each of these boards or commissions and place them as part of this newly formed organization to try to create more efficiency, more cohesion, more of a unified front on something as big as housing. Basically, there's a primary goals. It's affordable housing. In my proposal, I've focused not just on housing, which obviously is the big overarching piece, but it is also encompassing of community development. And I've heard from several constituents who, you know, I know that our town staff, for instance, is maxed, and you know, we could use help in a lot of areas such as grant writing and finding places where we could come with money. I mean, I know there are several people even in this room who feel that this should not be on the backs of taxpayers. And while I believe that there's an effort that we as a community need to put forward and devoting money and energy to this, I do respect the fact that there is money available in the greater community, in the state, in the federal government, that we need help organizing. Through sitting through the housing task force meetings for the past several months, they have brought together a lot of great ideas. And you know, they brought in other communities that are presenting great information on how they've seen success. You know, one of the key points that I've highlighted on page 3 is, you know, one of the things that I've seen that I think speaks volumes is hiring a housing coordinator to work as a subject matter expert in implementing, maintaining, and developing these sustainable relationships between all these entities. You know, an example, and this is just quick, is that there's an example of Woodstock, Vermont. They've hired a part-time individual who is incredibly well-versed on finding funds available and guiding people through the courses of getting federal funds, getting state funds that says, okay, well, if you did this, you could achieve this. And that helps spur development. The good thing is that this person becomes the figurehead of housing for our community. There's other places that are embedded in this. You know, when I talk about community development, it's housing, obviously, like I said, is the big arching piece here. But focusing on neighborhood revitalization, economic development, and job creation, being able to foster economic growth and job creation by attracting businesses, investors, and entrepreneurs, and researching and develop ways to coordinate these grant-based financial assets to our community, I think would be very beneficial. There's a huge other piece of this that I think is very, very important. And that is the community engagement and the empowerment. It's education. It's getting resources out to our community to understand the complexity of the issue. And, you know, the Housing Task Force in particular was aiming towards presenting a large section on our website, the town's website, to give resources for community members, businesses, to try to get them headed in the right direction. So this all comes together with, you know, what is the composition potentially that I'm proposing? And it's taking what you said, 2 select board members, 1 planning commissioner, and 1 design review board member. And then the remaining of 7 spots total would be community members appointed by the select board. And then, you know, I mentioned a community advisory group. They would have obviously the ability to find that. I think it's very important to get as much community input on this as possible. And then the last piece in the presentation that I have in part of the proposal is what I was speaking to at the beginning, is giving us a clear delineation of here are what the expected timeline of something like this. Given that the Housing Task Force disbanded I believe 2 weeks ago, you know, today is the 7th, proposing here's a potential proposal. This by no means is a final document. This is a start of a discussion that I would like input on from the community, from this board, of how we can make this more concise. And then as we continue to get closer to creating what it is that we are looking to have, there is a precise document that we could say, here is the blueprint for what we want, what we need, and here's the timeline to get it done. So that's the intent of this preparation into this proposal. It was to make sure that there's, just as we said, the Housing Task Force needed to have teeth and give them more power to do things. This is a way to say, here is a document that states what the goals, expectations, and roles of that committee are. The name is not, we're not stuck on the name, we're not stuck on any of it. It is just to start the conversation and give us a dialogue to start with, to then move this along so that we're not here a year from now creating the next entity of the housing committee.
It's a great presentation and I agree with a lot of it and I'm not disagreeing with any of it. On the committee composition, I think when you singling out the select board, the planning commission and design review board, and then when you talk about the other members, and they could be more members from those three boards, but I think what we're leaving out and it really should be included is development review.
When I say design, that's actually a typo. This should have
Okay,
been-
all right. I thought that was what you were saying. Okay. I'll just, back when I was on the planning commission, before I was on the select board, we not only drafted the ordinances, but we applied the ordinances because we reviewed applications. And we saw firsthand the shortcomings in the document and how to address those shortcomings. But when we took that level of review away from the planning commission and created the development review board, we took away that connection to the bylaw in practical application. And I think what we're missing the most in the whole process of development review and development ordinances is that knowledge of practical application being used in the drafting of the ordinances, and then have the drafters of the ordinances see how it works in practical application. And so I've been trying to build a bridge between those two boards, and they're both, the chairs of those two boards are very welcoming that with open arms. I just wanted to make sure that we were talking about development review on this, because I think that's just one more way that we'll be involved with each other. And
Yeah, and I think that what you just highlighted is actually something that when I talk about shovel-ready projects, I think using a blueprint model, I think is very important. Understanding, instead of looking at a project and saying, instead of waiting for someone to come to us and give us all the reasons why they want to change, let's say the Depot Street property, and they want to put something else in the back of it that changes the size or scope or anything of the actual property. I know that the Housing Task Force had already started to create a lot of these places, but literally having I don't want to call it a database, but literally a list of here are, potential properties that we can then say, with this property, parcel number 1, you can do X, Y, and Z already approved by, all of the existing ordinances. Now, obviously, if you wanted to spend the time to do all those things, you should know that stuff already. But if we can put it in one location and say, here's a plan that works. Lebanon has already done this, Lebanon, New Hampshire. There's other communities in New England that are doing exactly the same thing. And it leads to a developer not wondering, well, is my project going to get approved? It's, wow, which one can I pick? And I think those are the places that we can show ourselves as being more favorable for those types of developments and in progresses in the housing committee. I think those same things go to speak to, I know one of the items on part of your notes that are coming up is about open signs and flags is, there's a discussion of whether we have been listening to small businesses enough in the past. And I think this is a way to say, look, we're trying to give you, we're putting all of our eggs in one basket and saying, here are all the different options that you can do without having to tilt the scale at all. And I think that gives us a potential competitive edge.
And on the committee composition again.
Yeah.
I wonder if we should have in the makeup of the board, because I'd like to start putting this together, one select board member as being, okay, we need representation on this. We could appoint another one in the other 4 positions that would be open at that point. But I think we also want to make sure that we get citizen involvement, especially from the areas that need to be represented. And so it could be 2 select board members. It could be 2 of any of these board members, but let's not load the board with select board members. So just a suggestion. Yes.
Yeah. I would love, this is near and dear to my heart, this, and thank you, Jonathan, for bringing it up. I'm born and raised here. And I'm connected in so many ways to this issue. Number one, I have twin daughters who live with us because there's no place for them to rent and they no way can afford a house here. I live right on Highland Avenue.
They have other friends. Yeah. No,
My dad worked at Bromley for 25 years. My husband's been there for 40 years. They can't house people. I worked at Long Trail School. I'm on the board of Red Fox. We can't hire people to come and live here. It's a crisis. So when you say, Ivan, that this has to be citizens, I mean, it can't be just the boards. This has to be a community effort because we are in a crisis.
I think we need to have both. I think we have to have the boards.
Absolutely.
We're involved and we're in the conversation, but we really have to have people like yourself.
Entire community has to wrap themselves around this and figure it out.
But it also has to be a small enough group so that they can move.
Absolutely. But I mean, even if.
I think 7 is a good number.
But if you can get people from, businesses, I mean, I've talked to Orvis and Vermont Country Store, they can't even, bring people in here. So but never, I mean, forget trying to bring young people in here to live.
Well, there are large companies, organizations in the area that have talked about purchasing the Depot Street property to make the whole thing housing. Their help.
Right.
They just,
Well, and what Jonathan
and that's a lot
said,
of money to invest.
my oldest daughter lives in Park City, Utah. They have the same issue. And they've done a nice job of figuring out how to, because they had to, because I mean, their, median household price now is 1.2 million, but they figured out how to, because they had to. So there are other areas that we can look at to help us out to figure this out. Anyway, I hope we will do it.
Thank you.
And we have someone on the screen who wants to.
Yeah. John.
John Burnham, right.
Hello, Mr. Chair and Select Board. I just wanted to say that, as a housing task force member myself, I'm kind of speaking on behalf of that group as well as the Manchester Business Association at the same time and personally, and totally support what Jonathan has put forth to you all, and really excited, Ivan, in particular, that you and the select board are excited about getting going on some of the committees selection. As we were coming to some great opportunities for establishing various, I guess I would say, finding ways to get grants, finding ways to help tie in those loose ends and creating documentation and creating information on websites that would allow a lot of local residents and community members to be just as involved as we're talking about here without actually being on any of these boards. So I just wanted to express our support, the MBA support, as well as the Housing Task Force support of this potential new committee. And I agree with also, you definitely want individual community residents and representatives on those boards and people that are in the construction field and even, some business members as well. So thank you.
It might make sense to have somebody from MBA on the committee.
Sure.
So that was actually one of my, not to point you out particularly, John, because I believe you're a resident of Sunderland, is that correct?
Arlington, but yes,
Arlington.
not in Manchester, unfortunately.
One of the things with, obviously the select board, planning commission, at least on the application, is that you need to be a resident of the town of Manchester to be on one of those boards or commissions. I did state that, basically that we could use the discretion that if you had a connection to Manchester, which demonstrates unwavering commitment to the community, i.e. a business or Manchester.
You may not remember this, but we have had planning commission members that did not live in Manchester. And that's perfectly legal. It's getting the right people in the right place, and that, like you say, have a commitment to Manchester, but may not actually have an abode here. Steve, to the podium.
Very good. I think we all appreciate that, just that when I was on the board, and Ivan will recall this, the reason why we hired position that Gordon Black presently is in and designed that job description was for that purpose. And that's how we were sold on that, to spend that extra money. So Gordon, or that position needs to be the focus with your group, to do the grant writing, to do that was part of that job description. And I'm all for what you're doing. I think that it's fantastic, and get together a quorum and draw the local people in for input.
So the decision that would have to be made there, since we're limiting ourselves to a 7-member board, and I think that's the right thing to do. And I think Gordon should be involved. But the question becomes, is he a staff person that supports the group, or is he an actual member of the group? And I talk about Peter Brabazon with DRB. He's not a member of the board, but he certainly is a big part of what they do. And he provides the staff support for what the committee is doing. I think it's important to have that in-house staff report, because the members of the boards and commissions are volunteers and may not have the time to do the documentation and that sort of thing that goes along with the work of the committee. So it might make sense to designate a staff person to work with the committee, and Gordon, in my mind, would certainly be.
Yeah, I've talked with Gordon about it
Yeah,
since
that-
Jonathan sent this along, and he's very willing to.
Yes. So in the structure of the thing, I'd see him as a staff support, attending the meetings, participating even, but not necessarily one of the 7 members.
So, I mean, again, I think it sounds like there's relative agreement in a lot of the general areas of all of this. I think the next piece is, how do we move forward with, fine tuning certain areas of the purpose, the goals, those types of things.
I believe that a lot of that should be the work of the committee.
Okay.
I think our job is to have a basic understanding, as you've put together, as to where this might be going, to appoint the people, but let them tell us, because they're the ones that are doing all the hard work,
Sure.
all those other pieces of it.
I don't disagree with that. However, I do believe it's important for us to also set up,
Expectations.
yeah, because I think that's where some of the shifting happened in the past. So not a blank slate. This is your goal. This is what we expect, that we hope that you're able to do, and have that as part of the mission. And here are some potential examples of what we believe could be parts of your work. And I would be happy to,
We go around and around like we have been with this, if you don't have an outline of what you want.
Yeah.
And that's what we see, common goals.
yeah. Well, and that was sort of my intent in writing this as well, is taking the last presented mission and goals that were presented to the select board that we passed on because of the question of what the makeup of the board and who would report it to. So obviously there's some expansion on here. What I would, I do believe that we do need to provide as much structure and goals as possible, and to give a clear expectation so that we're not over here and they're over here.
Yes.
I think you guys know me, Kat
Welcome back.
Myers of Shires Housing. And I just wanted to thank also, with what a lot of other people have done, thank you, Jonathan, for keeping this item on the list to keep moving forward in Manchester. Thanks also to the other members of the former Housing Task Force. I was also a member of the committee, a non-voting kind of consulting member, and so I just wanted to point that out. It is a great opportunity for Shires Housing to be able to give advice and insight from the development perspective, developer perspective, and on the available resources and how to best bring them into the community. So whether it's a non-voting member or just an advisory person, love to stay engaged in whatever way you guys feel comfortable with. And then in terms of the intent, I wanted to underscore, something that I think, Jonathan, in your comments you were getting to, which is describing some work that was coming out of the Housing Task Force, which was, can we make, public resources inventories kind of available? And what does that signal to developers? And I just can't say enough how big of a deal it is to developers coming from any sector. We're the nonprofit sector, but you'll hear the same thing from private sector developers. It means a lot to see the investment in time, in resources, just in intention and in support, to see a community group having intentional conversations around housing to even move, interest forward as a developer. And when you don't see that, there's a lot of the housing crisis is everywhere. And there's a lot of communities that are begging for developers, again, private sector, nonprofit, any developers to come into their community and bring housing. And from the developer side, if you're looking at a community where you have to go through a local permitting process and all of the steps to get a project to happen, if you are not seeing that there's a publicly endorsed and real leadership in the community to support housing, then you're going to respond to the calls coming from the other communities that are saying, please come bring housing to our community, support our businesses. And so this is the kind of an effort that signals to developers, yes, we want you to come here. We want you to bring your dollars and your housing units to our community to serve our businesses. And when it provides that way for citizens to get engaged and make sure that would be similar, Ivan, to your input, I would say the composition of the committee, it can be really strong to have it be citizens complementary, because we all know living in these small Vermont communities, there's only so much volunteer energy in a community, and often the volunteers that are always raising their hands then get overtaxed, and these lower echelon committees can be a really good way. That's a bite that somebody that maybe is not ready to join the planning commission or the select board can get involved in and make a big difference. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. We're kind of bumping up against the clock here, but what I'd like to do is, and this has already been done to a certain degree. The planning commission has discussed this, the DRB has, but get recommendations from them as to which members they would like to have on this committee, and we'll do the same at this level. As I understand it, both of the chairs of the planning commission and the DRB are throwing their hats in as possible committee members. But we need to talk about it here, and I would like to try to begin the process of soliciting people from the greater community to fill the other 4 positions. And there's a number of different ways to do that. I mean, we can just hand select people, or we can ask people to submit an application.
I think it's important that we do ask and publicly put it out there that we're looking for, because we don't know. There may be people that have just never felt
So I
part
wouldn't
of the
have
group.
considered.
So I'll work on putting together some plans for outreach
Okay.
on that.
So in the meantime, between now and our next meeting, if the planning commission and the DRB could put together suggestions as to who among their members would be on this committee, and we'll do the same.
Perfect.
And we'll get that part of it done, and we'll try to start soliciting the other 4 positions, which, as I say, could be somebody from the boards, but I'd rather tap that huge resource that we have out there. And Kat, I hope that you stay involved, because I think the expertise that you bring to the conversation is very important.
Victoria had her hand raised.
Victoria, you got your hand up. We have 1 minute left in the meeting, and we have some other stuff to do, so.
I took it down, Ivan.
Okay, thank you. But we also have agenda items still to cover, so
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting.
we have a motion
Seconded.
and a second to extend the meeting. A simple majority accomplishes this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is extended. And I think we covered 10. Was there anybody else who wanted to speak to the housing task force or housing committee at this point? If not, 11 is the town manager updates. And of course, we lead off with the big one, the open flags and the sandwich boards.
Yeah, and there's a couple more to cover after those 3. But as you have heard a little bit more about this open flags and sandwich boards, we have an ordinance that covers these. They're in, I think it's in your, I think you have a copy of it in your packet, but basically, the flags are prohibited signs under our ordinance, and the sandwich boards are temporary signs that can be used in 90-day increments. And what's happened is our enforcement team, the zoning department has felt that, they want some feedback from us because the planning commission is going to tackle these two things and possibly change them in the future. So we have been enforcing the open signs, but now there's a push by a lot of business owners to just put them up anyways. And so Peter and Elias are looking for some feedback from the board, whether to keep up with the enforcement efforts on that, while knowing that the planning commission is going to deal with this in the future.
We've gone through this a number of different times, and there've been a number of proposals to allow open flags. And I believe that in the existing ordinance, I didn't have a chance to read all the way through it, but I think it is allowed under very specific circumstances where they don't have frontage on the street, visibility issues, something like that, that it might be allowed. And that might have been rescinded. I can't remember. But we do have a number of open flags in town. I think if we decide, if the planning commission decides, what's that?
I don't have any frontage on the street.
Yeah. Okay, all right, that's good to know. Because at one point that became part of the ordinance, and I'm thinking that I remember it being rescinded. And
It's crazy.
yeah, we've been around and around and around on this. I've had some discussions with the chair of the Development Review Board on this, and he suggested that if we decide to allow them, there should be some uniformity to it. And he said, for instance, they could be green and white with black letters, all the same size. And he said, an interesting thought would be that the town would provide the flag when you get the permit. And that way we would have a list of who was permitted for a flag, and that we would know that they had a flag that complied with, and this was just, I've just throw that out there because that was something that he suggested, and that was also a part of a conversation with the chair of the planning commission. So I know they're working on it, and.
We have put a proposal into the planning commission.
Yeah.
So that has gone in, and that is certainly, I mean, what you just suggested is certainly what we said.
But I don't know what the prevailing sentiment is here on open flags.
When I was asked to take I didn't have an open flag, I had my logo flag out. When I was asked to take it down, I just quickly, I could never get an answer as to why this was put into place. So then I did further investigation.
Well, it's because in the definition of a sign is included, the definition of sign includes anything that draws your attention to a business, and it includes flags, noises of certain types, flashing lights, things that you might not consider to be a regular sign. And you can certainly understand, we've tried to keep, we have a great commercial downtown, and we've tried to keep it. The thing with signs is you want your sign to be seen. There's a reason for that. And so there's a competition going on. Well, you just put up this sign, so I need to make mine more visible. And then if you make yours more visible than the other person does. And we've tried to keep everything to a level where the competition isn't taken away, but it doesn't completely dominate the streetscape. And it was the decision of a previous planning commission and board that we would continue to regulate these things, and it wouldn't be allowed. You could have a flag for a sign, but you wouldn't be able to have a sign because you're only allowed once.
I don't have either.
Okay, well then that sounds like a problem.
Yeah, I guess my question is, I went ahead to just and I called planning and zoning in Stowe, Middlebury, Woodstock, all Dorset, all the other towns, I sort of come into the same, area that Manchester is. They all allow flags. I mean, they kind of laughed at me when I said, we can't, what? So we,
So
as a group, I can tell you as a group, as you've already seen, we like my suggestion was either.
Well, hold on. First, I think you should go to the podium. If we're gonna have
Yeah, we have two people on Zoom with their hands up.
we've got,
And I'll just be quick. The proposals into the planning commission, we like the idea of it being, continuity, that we all look the same. That's why the green and white flags were out. The other suggestion was that a flag would be designed by, a BBA student that was approved by the town and all the businesses, that we all look the same, but the purpose is so that we can be seen. That is the purpose is, I'm in between a laundromat and a liquor store. I get lost very quickly. So that's our purpose. I mean, is that people see us and that we're open.
And I know the planning commission is working on this and it's certainly within their purview. And I understand that they don't want to put a lot of work in this if it's going to be squelched at this level. But I'm really interested to see what they come up with. And this is what they do. It's nice to cooperate with them in a conversational way, but it's not our job to direct them. But on the flip side, they need to kind of know where we land on it. So I understand the catch-22 of it all.
are they asking us to relax the ordinance at this point?
I don't.
No, they just wanted to know whether to enforce the current ordinance.
Well, that's what I mean.
I mean,
So basically, people are putting up flags despite the ordinance.
they are. There's some in their nose and our face.
Don't enforce it.
Going like this, we're putting up a sign anyways.
Right.
So,
But I mean, so if they do that with signs, that could potentially lead to every other aspect of the ordinance. So I would think it would be a bad idea to not enforce the ordinance in its current state.
Selling indulgence. Didn't end well for the Catholic Church.
Was there because this wasn't just open flags though, was it also sandwich boards?
Sandwich boards is also included, but there's a process for a sandwich board right now. So there's a temporary permit you can get for 90 days and you just complete an online form. Well, people are just doing that every 90 days, so it's a constant permit, not a temporary permit.
So I saw some language on this and it is way overly complicated, the way that it's written now. And so is this on an agenda to be revised? Is this?
It's been under discussion by the planning commission, so they're hoping to get feedback tonight
Okay.
and move forward.
And the proposal was put into the planning commission as asked. And then, to be discussed at the next meeting.
They have a meeting Monday night. I'm not sure what's on their agenda yet.
All I can say is I had a discussion with the person that cooks my dinners. And that individual doesn't understand what the big deal is with open flags.
Well,
I tend to agree.
the other thing that's available are I remember going through this when I was on the DRB, that we allowed for example, you can put an open sign hanging from your sign. For instance, the ones that look like the Vermont license plate. And a lot of people did do that. And they can put open in their doorway. There's ways, there are ways to put a sign up that said open.
Yes,
And-
and if it's
If you're way back, you can't, no one's gonna see that.
Well, if you're way back, if, for example,
I mean-
another person who's an advocate of the open signs,
But if you have,
nobody
if you
can
have
see it.
flag,
because
you're
they're
gonna see.
on the
the
main
flag.
road. So, but certainly when I go by that particular business, I know he's open. It's lit up like a Christmas tree.
But and again,
Questionable,
you can argue, because those
lighted-
open signs all look different. There's no, they're.
problem, and the other thing is, I don't know that the chair mentioned was that,
Can I read what they're proposing? 'Cause it might help.
yes.
yeah,
Okay, so basically, under the flag verbiage, they're saying that are no larger than 3 by 5 and contain only the word open in standard black text on a white bar with green accents. Not to be affixed to the business in such a manner to impede pedestrian or vehicular traffic or line of sight for adjacent businesses. And not to be in disrepair and not to be flown outside of operating hours. So that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's basically four things.
And then, and as it relates to the sandwich board things, freestanding signs shall not be bigger than 27 by 46 and shall be stored overnight when the business is not operating and when high wind or other extraordinary natural circumstances which may hinder normal operation. They will not contain images or wording outside of the existing signage standards. Pretty reasonable stuff.
And I think especially with sandwich boards, it's very important that they don't impede pedestrian circulation and that kind of thing, because they wind up being on the sidewalks. But
This is on the agenda for planning commission. It's
for the upcoming meeting.
Yeah, item number 4 for Monday.
So if they're looking for my perspective on this, I think it's an important enough issue that I want to hear, that I'm supportive of the effort. But I mean, again, we're second in the chain of getting this accomplished, and we haven't heard what the public has to say about it. So I try not to make promises that I can't keep or because as we've seen, things can come up in a hearing that you hadn't considered. So I'm supportive of the effort.
So that is helpful to know, because we were told that the select board actually ends up having the full decision on this.
Well, at the end of the day, yes. We're the ones that approve it. But we serve you, but we also serve everyone else in the community. So when we take on something like this, we hear from everybody. And because I'm not the smartest guy in the world, people always say things that I hadn't considered. Oh, okay, that presents an issue. Whenever we do anything, there are unintended consequences. And we need to try to expose as many of those as we can before rendering a final.
So if the process is now that the planning commission goes and discusses it and agrees on it, is that then?
Well, this is part of the ordinance, the land use ordinance.
You're talking about.
So it goes through the process that we were just talking about before. They have to have a public hearing.
Right, but after that,
And then it comes here and we hold a public hearing and we make a final decision on it.
select board.
Yes, yes.
So it goes to planning first, then back to you guys.
They approve it first.
Okay.
We don't put anything in place that they haven't suggested. And we can on an interim basis, but
So for tonight's purpose, it was just to get this out in the open with you guys.
Yep. They're asking apparently, are they spinning their wheels or should they put this in place and get it moving? And from my perspective,
Well,
let's
yeah.
get it moving.
I think so too.
Let's get it moving. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the feedback I need.
That's me. I don't speak
Well,
for the
I
board.
see everybody else nodding their heads.
Okay.
It's good for small business.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want these other two people, John Burnham and Vic?
Yeah, John, I don't see the hands, so I didn't know.
Sorry, my video won't work because, but I just wanted to say that, yeah, I'm thrilled to hear. I mean, about a week and a half ago, it was brought to my attention that there was some issues with signage, both open flags and sandwich boards. And I actually surveyed most of our member businesses about why they might use them and so forth, and prepared to present that to the planning commission. I was also on the planning commission's meeting last Monday. And, you know, they're certainly in favor of, you know, looking at this intently and trying to figure out some good solutions for everyone. Of course, there's never a one size fits all approach to anything. But I believe between what's already been submitted and the continued work, that we'd be able to come up with something that satisfied not only the businesses in Manchester and being able to fly open flags and have sandwich boards where it makes sense, and size wise and all that kind of stuff that we're all talking about. I believe the planning commission is going to be helpful for that, and I hope as it progresses through the channels that it becomes a change in the ordinance. So that's all I needed to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And do we have another hand up?
It's Victoria.
Victoria?
Ivan, hi.
All right.
Okay, now am I on mute?
Yeah.
Okay,
Got you.
third time's a charm. I gave in the last planning commission meeting a resource for sign ordinances which towns, states, governments must follow, which is the court case about Central Hudson. I'm not an attorney. I know that it looks like there are some past attorneys in the room, but Central Hudson is pretty direct with one of the points. I think there are 4 points in the Central Hudson test, which is to be content neutral. Now, I don't know if the word open and an open flag meets the definition of content neutral. But to me, a layperson, a resident of Manchester, I have a picture of one of the many open flags in Woodstock, Courtney, that I took like 8 years ago and periodically bring out of my cell phone and laugh and go, well, if Woodstock can do it, why can't Manchester? Haven't we taken enough time out of everyone's busy schedules and talked about open signs? It seems that if Woodstock can do it, Stowe can do it, and the business community and the residents support this, then why are we bogged down hashing this out in board meetings or commission meetings?
Exactly. And I think that's the planning commission's approach at this point, is to try to get a sense if the select board is receptive to the idea prior to passing it and moving it forward. And we just took a position on it of support. So it still has to go through the process, but looks like it's moving forward.
Thank you.
Let me get back. Go ahead, Scott, on the.
Okay, so I want to take a moment just to thank a couple generous donors, Meg and Andy Tarantino, along with RK Miles, made generous donations. And the town has purchased and put up approximately 30 flags, Main Street and Depot Street. And I just wanted to thank them for that. Bournebrook, we've talked about the sediment management projects. A project is a large project that we're working on, so there is a funding source. I had a meeting last week with BCRC and Josh Carvajal, the river management engineer. We're pursuing some state funding that has a state deadline grant pre-application letter due June 21st. We would only need 1 to 3 property owners involved in this project. If you remember, Nikki Buck, formerly of North Star Hydro, made a presentation to us earlier this year. And it's a very involved project, but we have, you committed some money towards developing something up there. If we could access large amounts of state funding or federal funding, and this is an opportunity. So we're moving in that direction. I just wanted to keep you updated on that. The local option tax results came in for the last quarter, and surprisingly, they stayed strong. We were up about 10,000 between the combined total compared to last year's same quarter. And we were kind of wondering why that was, and John Burnham had a couple suggestions tonight that the eclipse helped and the late season snowstorm. So those two things helped to really push. Yep.
Interesting.
And one more item, Farmers Market is looking to move. They didn't get their application for vending for Farmers Market
On my list too.
in time to me, but we will have it on next meeting's agenda. And I just wanted to let you know that they're gonna try to move to 719 Depot Street, which is across from RK Miles Lumberyard, that vacant lot there.
Wow.
Has nice parking, has electric power there. And so they submitted a vending permit application, which you will see at the next meeting. And we've also Peter found that they do have to go to the DRB. And the DRB takes a lot longer to warn their meetings. So they're not gonna have DRB approval on that, but they will have the select board approval for the vending license if you approve it at the next meeting. They're hoping to open the Thursday of Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, and along those lines, I did have a conversation with the chair of the DRB on this. And he feels quite strongly that they do need to review these vending permits, especially this one, but others, from the standpoint of making sure that the underlying property it doesn't put the underlying use of the property in violation of their existing permit. And there's many ways in which that could happen, but he was advocating very strongly for DRB review of vendors and DRB review of outside seating requests. And they're dealing with one right now as part of a permit application. And that particular owner has kind of said, well, why do I have to jump through all these hoops? Other people have just gone to the select board and gotten approval without having to do anything else. And it's because they're a new establishment and they're trying to put this in as part of their zoning permit. But he said, since it's an annual renewal, it's still going to be approved by the select board for outside seating. And with the existing ones and new ones, he thinks DRB should be involved because they have pretty strong ideas as what should be there as far as protection for the people that are sitting next to moving traffic and that sort of thing. And it's the kind of things that they deal with all the time. So I just wanted to let everybody know that they're really interested in being involved in the process with both outside seating and vendors.
So I just want to comment that usually what we see on an annual basis is the outside consumption permit for the
Yeah.
liquor license.
Well, I'm talking about sidewalk seating.
Okay, all right. So we do have a few of those. Yeah, yeah.
Seating.
What's that?
There's no seating.
No, this was in addition to,
These are two different issues that Tim had brought up with me. There was a third, but we already addressed that.
Okay, so you'll see this application for the vending permit next meeting, and the DRB will have it on their agenda whenever they're meeting next. And that's all I have, Ivan.
Is there any other business at the board level?
I do have a quick thing, if you don't mind. Wondering if there's been a change in policy as it pertains to dog licensing. Because I understand that some letters went out to dog owners saying that their dogs weren't licensed and that if they didn't have the license, the police would come to their house. I think it was signed by Police Chief Owens to enforce licensing. And so anyway, I just was curious to know what this all was about. So I looked up. There's some inconsistencies with the policy now because you can sign up your dog to get licensed online, but it says in the ordinance that you have to provide a valid signed certificate for rabies vaccination in order for it to happen. But online, you can just kind of put it in. Anyway, it seems like there's inconsistencies. And it also seems like there's like some weird enforcement stuff happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's not our bailiwick. Usually it's the town clerks, and April 1st, everybody's dog has to be relicensed. I'm not aware of any letter being sent out saying your dog is picked up. Well, if
Our
you
house
could,
got one because one of our dogs died.
someone forward me that so I could.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a pretty aggressive way to go about enforcing a $13,
Yeah, no, I know nothing about it. I'd like
Okay.
to see that.
all right.
But by state statute, that does fall under the purview of the town clerk. Town clerk is a separately elected official over which we have no control, nor should we.
But I think it says that the police department.
Well, the police department, we have
Dog
chosen
dispatch.
as our dog warden or whatever it is.
Animal control.
Animal control officer.
Oh, yeah.
The police department is our animal control.
Right.
Because we don't have an individual that does
The
that.
park is worse than their butt.
Well, I mean, but it's kind of that's a lot. I mean,
But, yeah, no, that's.
but the ordinance should also be updated. If you're allowed to submit online without a signed letter from a vet, then you should be able to.
You probably have to acknowledge on that online
But-
sign up.
But it
It's-
says specifically in the ordinance that you have to have a signed letter by the
Okay.
vet.
All
I,
right.
I believe it's also by the fact that rabies vaccinations for dogs are 3 years. And some time, based on like I could provide, like as a dog owner, I don't have to bring in that same letter every year to Anita. If she has it for, this certificate goes through 2027, I don't have to represent that.
I
I
re-
could just pay it.
I ran into an interesting situation where I went in to register our dog and I said, can I, I don't know when he had his last rabies. Is he current? She said, well, he is today, but next month it expires. So I could get the license, the dog license, because he was up to date on his rabies, but it was all. But I did have to take him and get another shot because it was expired the next month.
Yeah, send me that, Heidi, if you get this, or John,
I will.
if you have it too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any other business?
So I'm actually here representing the farmers market, so what am I going back to the manager and the president saying?
I will contact him tomorrow and tell him what he has to do. He submitted an application with a check already, so he has to do nothing as far as the town is concerned. He will have to fill out an application for a DRB, and we're gonna do that partially for him. He might have to sign it, and then he'll be on their next agenda.
What is the next thing?
Now, they have to warn it, and I think it's 30 days out.
So that could pass the 23rd.
That's right.
I, for one, will miss the farmer's market being right in the middle of town
Oh,
because
no.
I thought it was really cool.
I don't want to not miss children always being run over.
Yeah, I get that. I get that part of it. And that's,
It's a much better space.
yeah, that's.
And it's also an interesting reuse for a former fuel yard.
Yeah. Any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Undebatable, non-debatable motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Our next meeting is
Recording
May-
stopped.
May 21st.